Picture this. It's an ordinary Thursday morning in your city. Traffic flows, people rush to work, children walk to school. But something extraordinary is about to happen that most will never notice. In a few hours, the creator of the universe will literally walk down your street. Not in glory, not with trumpets, but hidden under the appearance of bread, carried in a golden vessel, moving house by house through your neighborhood like a divine census taker checking on his people. This is the scandal of Corpus Christi that millions miss every year. They see pageantry where they should see presence. They witness tradition where they should recognize transformation. They watch a religious parade when they should be encountering the same Jesus who walked dusty roads in Galilee. Padre Pio knew this secret. The monk whose hands bled Christ's wounds for 50 years understood something about Corpus Christi that escaped even many priests. He discovered that this feast day wasn't just about honoring the Eucharist. It was about accessing a specific kind of grace available only once a year. Here's what Padre Pio realized. Most spiritual practices work gradually, like medicine taken daily, but Corpus Christi functions like spiritual surgery, intense, precise, capable of healing wounds that have resisted years of ordinary prayer. The proof? In 1958, a desperate mother brought her mute daughter to San Giovanni Rotondo 3 days after Corpus Christi. The child hadn't spoken a word in 7 years. Padre Pio simply asked, "What did you do on Corpus Christi?" When the mother replied, "Nothing special," he smiled and said, "That's the problem. Corpus Christi is never nothing special." He then taught the mother 3 specific practices. She returned the following year with her daughter. On the feast day itself, as they completed the 3rd practice, the 7-year-old girl spoke her first words. "Jesus is here." Today, I'm revealing those same 3 practices that Padre Pio called the hidden architecture of divine visitation. These aren't complicated rituals requiring theological degrees. They're simple actions that create spiritual conditions for extraordinary grace. But here's what makes them different from other devotions. They work in sequence, each building on the previous one, creating what Padre Pio described as a perfect storm of receptivity in the human soul. If you're ready to transform this year's Corpus Christi from a beautiful tradition into a personal encounter that could change everything, write in the comments, "Jesus, come to my home." Your declaration of faith helps this message reach others who desperately need these spiritual keys. The first practice begins 24 hours before Corpus Christi in the most unlikely place, complete darkness. Before revealing these practices, you need to understand why Corpus Christi creates unique spiritual opportunities. Padre Pio explained it using an analogy that stunned his spiritual director. "Imagine," he said, "that Jesus lived in your neighborhood but never left his house. You could visit him any time, but he stayed inside. Then once a year, he decided to take a walk through your entire community, stopping at every street corner, blessing every home he passed. That walk changes everything, not just for him, but for the entire neighborhood. This is Corpus Christi's mystical reality. For 364 days, Jesus remains sacramentally present, but hidden in tabernacles. On this one day, he emerges, he processes. He visits publicly. The spiritual atmosphere of entire communities shifts when the Blessed Sacrament moves through their streets. But here's the crucial insight Padre Pio discovered. This divine visitation creates what he called grace windows, specific time periods when certain kinds of healing, guidance, and transformation become supernaturally accessible. These windows don't open randomly. They respond to human preparation, intention, and receptivity. The 3 practices work because they align your spiritual state with these grace windows, creating what mystics call divine synchronicity. The first practice exploits the most powerful window of all. the 24 hours preceding Corpus Christi. Padre Pio discovered that Jesus begins his visitation not when the procession starts, but when his people begin preparing their hearts to receive him. Modern believers often rush through religious celebrations without adequate preparation. We show up expecting grace without creating capacity for it, but extraordinary divine encounters require extraordinary readiness. That's why the first practice happens in complete darkness, in absolute silence, 24 hours before Corpus Christi. Padre Pio called it the inventory of need, and he considered it more important than attending the celebration itself. Many people ask me how to experience deeper intimacy with God in our noisy, distracted world. The answer often lies in practices that our spiritual ancestors understood, but we've forgotten. This darkness exercise is one of them, and it's been transforming lives for decades. Speaking of transformation, countless people have told me that discovering Padre Pio's complete spiritual teachings revolutionized their prayer life. That's why we created the Spiritual Secrets of Saint Padre Pio, a comprehensive collection of his most powerful practices, prayers, and mystical insights. These aren't available anywhere else in this format, and they perfectly complement what you're learning today. You'll find the link pinned in the comments. Now let me walk you through this first practice step by step, exactly as Padre Pio taught it to that desperate mother in 1958. Wednesday evening, as the sun sets before Corpus Christi Thursday, Padre Pio would instruct his spiritual children to perform what he called the inventory of need. This wasn't meditation or contemplation. It was spiritual archaeology, digging into the deepest layers of the soul to uncover what desperately needed divine attention. Most people, he explained, live on the surface of their spiritual lives. They pray about symptoms, not sources. They ask God to change their circumstances without examining what in their hearts created those circumstances. The inventory of need reverses this pattern. It requires complete honesty about your spiritual condition, but it also creates unprecedented openness to divine healing. Begin at sunset. Choose the darkest room in your home. No candles, no ambient light, complete darkness. This isn't arbitrary. Darkness eliminates visual distractions and forces you to encounter your interior world without external reference points. Sit comfortably but don't lie down. Keep a notebook and pen within reach, but don't write yet. The first phase happens entirely in interior silence. Start with this prayer Padre Pio composed specifically for this practice. Jesus, tomorrow you will walk through my community. Tonight, I want you to walk through my heart. Show me what you see when you look at my life. Help me see myself as you see me, without illusion or self-deception. Then ask yourself 3 questions, spending at least 10 minutes with each one. First question, what am I carrying that I was never meant to carry? This targets burdens, resentments, responsibilities, and emotional weight that belongs to God, not you. Many people exhaust themselves carrying things Jesus explicitly offered to carry for them. In the darkness, without external distractions, these burdens become obvious. Teresa Martinez from Colombia shared her experience. I thought I was a generous person because I worried constantly about my adult children's problems. In the darkness, I realized I was actually trying to be their Holy Spirit. I was carrying anxiety that prevented them from learning to trust God directly. Second question, what am I avoiding that I know I need to face? This uncovers areas of spiritual avoidance, difficult conversations, necessary changes, uncomfortable truths about yourself or your relationships. The darkness creates safety for acknowledging what you've been running from. Third question, what do I need from God that I've been afraid to ask for? This is often the most revealing question. Many believers unconsciously edit their prayers, asking for what they think they should want rather than what they actually need. Corpus Christi's grace window responds to authentic need, not spiritual performance. After spending 30 minutes with these questions, turn on a small light and write down whatever emerged. Don't edit or spiritualize your responses. Write exactly what came to you in the darkness. The power of this practice lies in its radical honesty. When you inventory your actual spiritual condition, not your aspirational spiritual condition, you create precise targeting for divine grace. Maria Santos from Brazil described her breakthrough. I wrote down that I needed God to help me forgive myself for my son's suicide 3 years earlier. I had never admitted that I blamed myself, even in private prayer. Writing it down in the dark felt like lancing a spiritual wound that had been poisoning my relationship with God. Complete the inventory by writing this commitment. Jesus, tomorrow when you walk through my community, I give you permission to address everything I've written here. I trust you to heal what needs healing, change what needs changing, and provide what I truly need. Keep this notebook with you throughout Corpus Christi. You'll reference it during the second practice, when Jesus actually walks through your streets. This darkness exercise creates what Padre Pio called spiritual targeting. Instead of generic prayers for blessing, you've identified specific areas where divine intervention can create maximum transformation. The second practice activates this targeting system during the actual procession, when Jesus moves through your community, carrying all the grace necessary to address what you discovered in the darkness. The procession of Corpus Christi recreates one of history's most overlooked mysteries, what it felt like to walk alongside Jesus during his earthly ministry. Padre Pio understood that the Eucharistic procession isn't just a beautiful tradition. It's a time machine offering 21st century believers the same experience the apostles had walking through Galilee. But most people attend processions as spectators, missing the mystical opportunity entirely. They watch instead of participate, observe instead of encounter. The second practice transforms you from audience member to traveling companion of Christ. Padre Pio called this silent companionship, and he based it on a profound insight. During the procession, Jesus experiences the same emotions he felt during his earthly ministry: love for his people, sadness for those who don't recognize him, joy when he encounters genuine faith. The practice requires positioning yourself where you can walk directly behind the monstrance, close enough to maintain visual contact with the Blessed Sacrament throughout the entire procession. This isn't about convenience or comfort. It's about creating the proper spiritual geometry for intimate encounter. As the procession begins, establish what Padre Pio called interior silence. This doesn't mean external quiet. Processions involve music, prayers, and crowd noise. Interior silence means creating a space within yourself where only you and Jesus exist, regardless of external activity. Begin each step with this interior mantra: Jesus, I am with you. Not Jesus, be with me. That's petition. Not Jesus, help me. That's request. Simply, Jesus, I am with you. Pure companionship. The same presence the apostles offered during their 3 years of walking together. After establishing this rhythm, reference your inventory of need from the previous evening. As you walk, silently present each item to Jesus. Jesus, I am with you, and I'm carrying this burden I was never meant to carry. Jesus, I am with you, and I'm avoiding this situation you want me to. Jesus, I'm with you, and I need this thing I've been afraid to ask for. Don't elaborate or explain. Simply present each need like a child showing a parent a broken toy, trusting completely in their ability to fix it. Father Miguel Rodriguez from Peru experienced dramatic healing through this practice. I had been struggling with doubt about my priestly vocation for 2 years. During the procession, I simply walked behind Jesus and said, Jesus, I am with you, and I'm doubting my calling. I didn't ask for anything specific, just acknowledged his presence with my struggle. By the end of the procession, the doubt had completely disappeared. Not because I received answers, but because I remembered what it felt like to simply be with him. The third element involves practicing what Padre Pio called vicarious intercession. As you walk in silent companionship with Jesus, become aware of the people lining the streets. Look at them the way Jesus looks at them, with infinite compassion and understanding of their hidden needs. For each person you pass, offer this silent prayer. Jesus, you love this person more than they know. Meet their deepest need today. Don't try to discern what their need is. Trust Jesus to know and respond appropriately. This practice transforms you into what Padre Pio called a human monstrance, someone who carries and radiates Christ's presence to others. When you walk in authentic spiritual union with the Eucharistic Jesus, you become a channel for the same grace being carried in the golden vessel ahead of you. The most powerful aspect of silent companionship is its simplicity. You're not performing complex prayers or maintaining elaborate meditations. You're simply walking with Jesus the way his first disciples walked with him, present, attentive, available. Sarah Thompson from Texas shared her transformation. I had attended Corpus Christi processions for 15 years without ever feeling anything special. The first time I practiced silent companionship, I finally understood what the apostles experienced. It wasn't about miracles or visions. It was about the profound peace of simply being in his presence. As the procession concludes and returns to the church, don't let the experience end. The third practice extends this sacred companionship into your home, creating ongoing opportunities for the graces received during the procession to transform your daily life. The final practice addresses Corpus Christi's greatest tragedy, that Jesus' public visitation to your community typically ends when he returns to the church. Most people experience beautiful moments during the celebration, then return to ordinary life unchanged. Padre Pio discovered that the graces available during Corpus Christi don't automatically disappear when the procession ends. They remain available for 8 full days, the traditional octave of the feast, but only if you create ongoing opportunities for Jesus to continue his visitation in your personal life. The third practice, domestic visitation, transforms your home into an extension of the Corpus Christi procession, allowing Jesus to continue the healing work he began during the public celebration. Unlike the first 2 practices, this one requires physical elements. After returning from the Corpus Christi celebration, immediately create what Padre Pio called a threshold of welcome in your home. Choose a small table or surface in the area where your family spends the most time together, living room, kitchen, or family room. This location matters because the practice works through integration with ordinary family life, not separation from it. Cover the surface with the finest white cloth you own. White represents the purity of intention required for this practice. Place 3 items on the cloth: a crucifix or image of Jesus, a lit candle, and your inventory of need from Wednesday evening. The arrangement creates what Padre Pio called domestic sacred geometry, a visual reminder that Jesus desires to continue his Corpus Christi visitation in the intimate spaces of your daily life. Once established, gather your family, or stand alone if you live alone, before this domestic altar and speak these words. Jesus, you have walked through our community today. Now we invite you to walk through our home, our relationships, our daily concerns. We give you permission to continue your visitation here for the next 8 days. The power of domestic visitation lies in its rhythm of return. 5 times each day for 8 days. Approach this altar for brief moments of reconnection with Jesus' ongoing presence. Morning before breakfast. Jesus, walk through my responsibilities today. Midday, around lunch. Jesus, walk through my relationships and interactions. Afternoon, before dinner preparation. Jess, Each prayer takes less than 30 seconds, but creates a framework for recognizing Jesus' activity throughout ordinary time. The Rodriguez family from Guatemala has practiced domestic visitation for 12 years. The first year, we thought it was just a nice tradition. But by the third day, we noticed our arguments were shorter, our patience longer, our gratitude more natural. It was like having an invisible family counselor who actually changed hearts instead of just giving advice. Most powerfully, this practice transforms your perception of daily life. Instead of seeing ordinary activities as separate from spiritual experience, you begin recognizing Jesus' presence in cooking, cleaning, working, resting, and relating. Keep a small journal near your domestic altar. After each visit, write one sentence describing how you noticed Jesus' presence since your last prayer. Over 8 days, you'll accumulate a record of divine activity that most people never recognize. Elena Vasquez from Mexico shared her journal entry from day 6. Jesus walked through my argument with my teenage daughter. Instead of escalating like usual, I heard myself asking what was really bothering her. She broke down crying and told me about bullying at school that I never knew about. The argument became healing. The practice concludes on the 8th day with a ceremony of gratitude. Gather your family before the domestic altar and read aloud from your journal, acknowledging all the ways Jesus continued his Corpus Christi visitation in your home. Then speak this final prayer. Jesus, your 8-day visitation to our home is complete, but we never want you to leave. Help us recognize your presence every day of the year, not just during special celebrations. Many families find this practice so transformative that they maintain their domestic altar permanently, continuing the rhythm of 5 daily visits throughout the year. When Padre Pio taught these 3 practices together, he called them mystical mathematics, a spiritual equation that creates predictable results when applied with sincere faith. Understanding how they integrate multiplies their individual power exponentially. The sequence creates what mathematicians call a compounding effect. Each practice amplifies the effectiveness of the others, creating total transformation greater than the sum of individual parts. The inventory of need, practice 1, functions as spiritual diagnosis, identifying precisely where divine intervention can create maximum impact. Without this preparation, the remaining practices lack focus and power. Silent companionship, practice 2, applies Jesus' healing presence to the specific needs identified during the inventory. This targeted application explains why people experience such dramatic breakthroughs during processions when they've properly prepared. Domestic visitation, practice 3, extends and integrates the graces received during the procession, allowing profound spiritual experiences to transform ordinary daily life rather than remaining isolated peak moments. But the real power emerges in the connections between practices. Your Wednesday evening inventory creates spiritual targeting for Thursday's procession. Your Thursday procession experience provides evidence of Jesus' response to your inventory. Your 8-day domestic visitation allows integration of these graces into permanent life changes. Dr. Carmen Rodriguez, a Catholic therapist who has studied Padre Pio's practices for 20 years, explained, "What makes this system so effective psychologically is that it engages all 3 components, or people who complete all 3 practices consistently report what Padre Pio called the 3-fold fruit: clarity about God's will for their lives, confidence in their ability to access divine help when needed, and communion with Jesus that transforms ordinary time into continuous prayer." The integration also creates what he called mystical momentum. Each year's practices build upon previous year's foundation, creating spiritual growth that compounds annually. 5th-year practitioners report entirely different experiences than 1st-year practitioners, not because the practices change, but because their capacity for receiving grace expands. Most importantly, this system transforms Corpus Christi from an annual celebration into an ongoing way of life. The practices teach you to recognize and respond to Jesus' presence throughout the year, making every day a kind of domestic Corpus Christi. As we conclude this journey into Padre Pio's hidden wisdom, consider the extraordinary gift you've received today. You now possess the same 3 practices that have transformed thousands of lives over the past 70 years. The same spiritual technologies that healed that mute child in 1958 are now available to heal whatever needs healing in your life. But knowledge without application remains powerless. These practices work only when lived, not when merely understood. This year's Corpus Christi could be the turning point where your spiritual life moves from admiration of God to actual encounter with Him. Think about your current spiritual struggles, the burdens you carry, the avoidances you maintain, the needs you haven't dared voice. Now imagine experiencing Corpus Christi with complete honesty about these realities, walking in genuine companionship with Jesus as He addresses them, then creating 8 days of ongoing domestic visitation where healing can deepen and integrate. That's not fantasy. That's precisely what these practices create when applied with sincerity and faith. Padre Pio's final words about Corpus Christi were these: "This feast exists because Jesus refuses to remain distant from human struggle. He comes to our streets, enters our homes, walks through our ordinary concerns, but He can only heal what we honestly acknowledge and courageously present to Him." Your inventory of need begins Wednesday evening. Your silent companionship happens during Thursday's procession. Your domestic visitation extends for 8 transformative days. Every element is within your reach, requiring nothing except honesty, faith, and consistency. If these teachings have stirred hope in your heart, share your commitment in the comments. Write, "I will practice all 3." If you're ready to experience Corpus Christi as spiritual breakthrough rather than religious tradition, your declaration encourages others facing similar spiritual hunger. More importantly, if you know someone struggling with burdens they can't release, doubts they can't resolve, or needs they can't voice, share this video with them. Sometimes the greatest act of love is introducing someone to practices that could transform their relationship with God forever. Subscribe and activate notifications so you never miss teachings that can deepen your spiritual journey. We're building a global community of people committed to living the saints' wisdom in practical, life-changing ways. But remember Padre Pio's promise. When we approach Jesus with radical honesty and genuine faith, we never remain unchanged. Let this Corpus Christi prove that promise in your own life. The practices await, the grace windows will open. Jesus will walk through your community and desires to walk through your life. The only question remaining is, will you walk with Him?